Welcome everyone! Today I wanted to address a common question I hear regarding baking with fresh milled flour. That is, do I have time for this? I ask myself this often before I started making our own bread products. I live a busy life, I'm a mom of 4, we have kids in sports, all the things. So the convenience of going to the store and buying our bread was easy. However, was it really saving me time? What about the health and energy and mood of my family? After I saw the benefits of eating bread made with fresh milled flour in my family, I started to realize that, no, this store-bought bread wasn't saving me time. In fact, it was taking my time. I had a hungrier family as they weren't full. I was spending more time in the kitchen, getting snacks and preparing something else. We were moody and experiencing super low energy levels, so I was managing behavior more. Once I started making bread from fresh milled flour, we were satisfied after meals. I didn't have kids asking for snacks every 20 minutes. Although, let's be honest, my 4-year-old still does, as I think that's just what that age does. Anyone with me? We were happier and more energized though. I was able to spend less time in the kitchen because of this. So today I want to show you how long it takes me from start to finish to make my family's sandwich bread and rolls for this particular week. Here I am milling my flour. I have an upcoming video on my recommendations on equipment, where I get my grains, what grains I use, how I store grains. Basically, we'll get a little more into the weeds of things. But for now, I'm milling a hard red wheat and a hard white wheat. Combining the two creates a really great flavor that we love. As you can see, this process is not hands-on all the time. While the grain is milling, I'm getting my other ingredients ready. Here, I am adding my warm water, half of my flour, and all the yeast to autolyze. Basically, just letting my flour rest and hydrate a bit. Sometimes I add all the yeast, sometimes I wait on the yeast. It just depends on if I'm using dry active yeast or instant yeast. You'll notice I'm using a different mixer than my mom's old Bosch. A while ago, my husband purchased this Bosch universal mixer for me, knowing it was a worthy investment for our kitchen, and it sure has been. I love this thing. So I'm just mixing and going to let it rest for 15 minutes, all while my flour is milling. You will see me adjusting my bowl every once in a while by the mill so that the flour doesn't spill out. I will link this recipe in the description box below. It's a great one and really easy. I prepare all the other ingredients, olive oil, honey, and salt, while the mill is doing its thing. This just helps the process move more seamlessly for me. You can see that the milling took 13 minutes. I milled a lot of flour and I had extra for a few other things I was making later that day. While the dough hydrates a bit more, I usually fill it with cleaning something in the kitchen. Here I noticed there were a bunch of splatters on the tile, so why not? Use the moment wisely, right? After the 15 minutes, you can see that it is really bubbly and ready to go. I add in all the other ingredients, oil, honey, salt, and remaining flour. Here's a small tip. Put the oil in first, and then measure out the honey in the same measuring cup. It slips right out because of the oil. The recipe calls for 5 more cups of flour. However, I add 4 cups and then watch my dough and add a little flour at a time. That usually equals about 1 more cup. Sometimes less, but usually not more. Here's where you want to keep an eye on it and make sure it is the consistency you want, the hydration you want. I typically look for the dough to start pulling away from the sides. I'll show you more about this. I usually know how much I need, but for sake of demonstration, I'm going to show you the process and what the dough looks like with not enough flour and just the right amount of flour. So here you see that the dough is so sticky and wet. It's sticking to the sides a ton. It definitely needs more flour. This is where I have found having a really good mixer like this Bosch makes the world of difference and saves me the most time. The dough is looking a little better, but needs more flour. You'll see that it isn't sticking as much to the sides of the bowl, but still looks pretty shaggy and wet. Here, we're looking pretty good. It's not sticking to the walls, looks good to me, so it's time to start the kneading. This is where I stop adding flour and just let it mix. Kneading is the process of working the dough to develop its gluten structure. You'll see that after kneading, the dough will be smooth, elastic, and strong. This leads to a well-risen and textured final product. I stopped the mixer to get an idea of where we're at. If the dough isn't super stretchy and tears right away, we aren't there yet. I know my dough is done kneading when it is nice and stretchy like this and doesn't tear right away. With fresh milled flour, you really need a good strong mixer to knead the dough. I'm obviously editing out time, but the kneading for my dough today took about 8 minutes. Here is where I determine what I want to bake or what I need for the next few days. I could do all sandwich loaves, buns, cinnamon bread, cinnamon rolls, dinner rolls, to name a few. Today I'm going to make a sandwich loaf, a cinnamon raisin swirl loaf, and use the rest of the dough to make hoagie rolls. There are other recipes I use to make dinner rolls and burger buns that I will share in a later video. However, this dough works perfectly for those things as well. And remember, this is about saving time today. I weigh out about 2.5 pounds of dough for my sandwich bread. I use a pan called a Pullman loaf pan. They are great and make uniform sandwich slices that are great sizes for my kids. I'll link the one I'm using in the description box below. I'm not particular in how I shape the dough. I usually just roll it out, do a few folds, and roll it up tightly, pinch the seams together and put it in the pan. I put the lid on and leave it a crack open so I can see when it has risen to where I want it. Cinnamon raisin swirl bread is so easy. I'm just using brown sugar I had made. Brown sugar is so easy to make. Just put some sugar in a mixer with a couple tablespoons of molasses and mix it on high and you have brown sugar. I roll the dough a little thinner and spread it with brown sugar, cinnamon, and raisins. When you spread the brown sugar, just make sure you leave a little space around the edges so that you can pinch your seams together when you roll it up and you won't have sugar leaking out during the baking process. If you are new to working with fresh milled flour or just bread baking in general, I would really recommend watching the initial mixing and then the kneading process so that you can learn and get a really good idea of when your dough is done. I have found that it doesn't always follow a strict timeline with kneading. Sometimes it changes depending on your grains, the temperature of your kitchen, even your machine. But after some time, you'll get the hang of it and you won't need to be so close, I promise. What took my KitchenAid 40 minutes now takes my Bosch 6 to 9 minutes. That's a big time saver. You will see here that I rolled this dough out way too long for my loaf pan, so I'm trying to scrunch it down a bit. It didn't affect the taste, but it sure changed the shape of the loaf, which you'll see in a bit. Nothing is perfect here, you all. You'll see a lot of mistakes along the way. I have used these large 2-gallon bags for proofing my dough. You could use a towel or a plastic shower cap, but these bags work great. The dough doesn't stick to it, and I can see it clearly and determine when it's ready really well. And I just wipe them clean and reuse them over and over again. Then I shape the rolls and weigh them out. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I like when they are around the same size. I have found about 70 to 80 grams is the perfect size for my family. The hoagie rolls are just rolled up, pinch the seams a bit, and call it good. I'd love to hear from you. What questions do you have? Does this feel overwhelming or doable? I will say the shaping here took me long today because of the different things, and I'm trying to go a little slower for demonstration. It should take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes depending on what you're making. All through this recording, I'm trying to get things done in the house and making use of the time home. While the dough is rising, I'm feeding my sourdough starter. I'm just using some of the flour I just milled. I'm excited to show you some of our favorite sourdough recipes in upcoming videos. Fresh milled flour is amazing, but the added benefits of sourdough is an added bonus. After 20 minutes, everything has risen to my satisfaction. With the Pullman pan, I look for it to rise to about 1 inch to 1/2 inch from the top of the pan. With the rolls, I usually just put them in the oven at the same time, or I might give them a little more time to rise and then bake them. The way I've found that works for me to see if they are ready is called the dimple test. Just poke them, and if it leaves a small dimple, it's ready. If it springs right back, give it a little bit more time. Full disclosure, I overbaked the buns. I was busy cleaning up and coloring with my daughter, who I've been talking to during this video, and failed to check the oven. They were just fine and delicious, but definitely could have used a little less time in the oven. I left the loaves in as I knew those would need more time. It's usually around 35 minutes in a 350-degree oven for sandwich loaves. I look for the internal temperature of my bread to be between 190 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the bread is done, transfer to a cooling rack right away. I also lay my loaves on their sides to cool, as it helps the loaf not to sink in. And although it is so tempting to just dig into the loaf, I highly recommend letting it cool completely. It will get gummy if you cut into it too soon. My daughter and I were so hungry, so we just had to have a hoagie roll with butter and some crabapple jelly. We had canned this from our crabapple trees in the backyard last fall. It was delicious. The cinnamon bread needed the most time. The cinnamon loaf is done, and you will see the odd shape. It didn't sink in, it just had way too much dough folded up on the ends. Oh well. I didn't promise you perfection, and I'm certainly no expert in this process. Okay, so the total time was 2 hours. That might seem like a lot, but if my math is correct, I think it was about 40 minutes of hands-on work. The other hour and 20 minutes, I was working on projects in our home and spending time with my daughter. And now I have delicious, nutritious bread for my family, which after it cooled, my daughter and I enjoyed the cinnamon raisin bread with some chia seed pudding, homemade granola, and fruit. If you haven't tried chia seed pudding, it's delicious, packed with nutrients like fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, protein, and antioxidants, and it's so easy to make. I hope you feel encouraged and maybe a little more empowered to try this on your own. Thank you so much for watching, and I'd so appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to the channel. I hope to see you next time, where I'll be going over what you need to start this journey feeling ready and empowered. I'll see you next time.